Mike, good morning. Welcome back to Houston.
Good morning.
I don't know if everybody in this audience knows that you grew up here in Houston.
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you provide us a little bit of what that early days in Houston? I guess you're one of 10 kids.
I'm the last of 10 kids. And growing up in Sunnyside it was very interesting, very challenging, for our family. My dad was in the construction business, but it was a time when you didn't realize how tough it was. But it was, my mother did a tremendous job keeping us together and keeping us focused and keeping us on track.
And first of all, I should have started by saying I can't think of a person that more exemplifies the principles of scouting than yourself, with your character, your intensity, your leadership, and your service. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
I know things change for you. You talk about it in your Hall of Fame speech, which still is ranked as one of the top Hall of Fame speeches of all time. But things changed for you when you were 12, right? You lost one brother when you were 5, and a second brother when you were 12, and things changed for you.
Yes, sir. My first brother that I lost at 5 years old really couldn't quite understand what had taken place. The second brother really hit me, and just before that, 6 months before that, my father and my mother divorced. And so it was a time in my life when 6 months after my dad left, my brother is now gone, who came back home to help out financially, and he was killed in an automobile accident, hit by a drunk driver. So for me, at 12 years old, I was in a in a flex, in a bind, whatever you would call it. I was really trying to figure out which way to go and what I was going to do with my life, and really what I believed. What exactly did I believe about life? Is there really a God that would allow this to happen? I don't know. And so at that time, about 2 weeks after my brother's funeral, I was in the kitchen, and I was vacillating back and forth as to what I was going to do, and I kind of settled on mediocrity. I was just going to be mediocre because I wasn't willing to give my best and not get there. I didn't want to be the worst because nobody wants you on their team when you're the worst. So, but if I could be mediocre, that's where I wanted to be. That was the sweet spot. And it was at that time that my mother walked in the kitchen and she saw me and she said, son, I want you to come over here. I need to talk to you about this thing called life. And she put her hands on my forearm and she said, son, in life, there are times that you get punched in the gut. And sometimes you get knocked flat on your back. And when that happens, you have to get up and you got to dust yourself off and you got to get back in that ring, son, and you got to keep swinging. You got to keep swinging and keep swinging until you're the only one left. That is what life is all about. And then she said, I want to ask you this question. And I know it's unfair. You're just 12 years old. But I need to know if you can be the man of the house. So at that moment, I'm thinking, man of the house? Whoa. But when I looked at her, I realized that she really, really believed in me. And I think about that so often, how many times if someone looked you in the eyes and really, really believed in you? And so obviously I said, yes, Mom, I can do that. And something happened. I walked in my room, I got out a sheet of paper, and I began to write something that was in my heart, and it had been there. But there wasn't a challenge that took me to that place. But I got out a sheet of paper, and I began to write out what was in my heart. The first thing I wrote was, find a way to get a scholarship, go to college, get my degree in which I become the first in my family to do so, become an All-American, get drafted and go to the NFL and buy my mom a house and take care of her for the rest of her life, become an All-Pro, go to the Super Bowl, and own my own business. At 12 years old, I wrote that out and I put it on the wall. And that became my driving force. It was the last thing I looked at before I went to bed, and it was the first thing I looked at when I got up in the morning. The only thing about that is I wasn't playing football at the time. I had to beg my mom to let me play. We were Pentecostal, and Pentecostal, particularly at that time, there was no sports.
Mike, I find it amazing that you can point to one point in your life that really set you on the right course and set that path for you. And the burden of being 12 years old and needing to be the man of the house is extraordinary. What caused you to pursue football? You weren't playing football at the time. What was it about football that caught your passion?
As a kid, I didn't really know much about the game. None of my brothers played. There was no sports in the house. And a friend of mine was telling me about the Dallas Cowboys. And I would sneak and watch the game. We weren't even allowed to watch football. I would sneak and watch the game from time to time. And Roger Staubach was a guy that I really, really admired. He always seemed to say the right things. He handled himself with dignity. He played the game all out. And that was something that I aspired to be. I really, really loved the game. And I would sneak and play the game on the other streets in the neighborhood. And I just had a desire. It filled my heart. It was the thing that I thought about all the time. So that's where it came from.
You talk about in your life, you talk about a few of the folks that impacted you. Coach Brown in high school, I guess if I got that right, Coach Brown.
Yes.
Can you talk about how he impacted you and how he steered you and ultimately inspired you to go on to Baylor University, where you met another great one of your coaches and leaders, Grant Taft?
Before I go there, and Coach Brown was definitely one of the, pillars in my life. Before I go there, I want to talk about the opportunity to become a Boy Scout. That was a turning point in my life. And I really hadn't thought about it a whole lot. And I really didn't think my dad was going to let me do it. During the school year, I had the opportunity, we worked on the weekends. So being a Boy Scout was something that I did not think, I couldn't play football, so no sports, so I didn't think that was going to be allowed. But they were passing out the information at school, and so I said, I'm going to take it home and I'm going to ask my dad if I can be a Boy Scout. And when I took it home, my dad looked at the information and he said, seems like this is a pretty decent organization. Helps you become disciplined and things like that. So maybe I'll let you do it. I was shocked that he allowed me to do that, but I only went on a couple of weekend trips to Camp Straight. And that was really one of the turning points of my life, to allow me to come out of a neighborhood, allowed me to come out of difficult situations at home, and put on a uniform that separated me and allowed me to be, aspire to be something that I really wanted to be. And that was a leader. Being able to take the scout oath, being able to shake a man's hand and shake it with a firm grip, being able to look him in the eyes, being able to speak up when somebody's talking to you, being able to walk in a particular way. When I put on that suit, something happened. I was something special. I was a part of something bigger than just the neighborhood that I grew up in. It was a very, very important moment in my life. When I think about other leaders in my life, the coaches in my life, Coach Brown was definitely one of them, that everything that I learned as a scout, he continued to pull out of me as a leader. So, son, I want you to understand that there's something special about you. And I know where it came from. Part of that came from growing up in a Christian home. Part of it came from being a Boy Scout and being able to speak up when somebody's speaking to you, talking to you, being able to stand and quote things and being able to lead a group of young boys. All of those things were extremely important, and to this day helped me become the leader that I am.
Well, thank you for sharing that. You were told as a young man getting out of Sunnyside there was no exit. You were there. You had a mother, strong mother. You got into Boy Scouts. You found some other leaders that helped you out. Ultimately got you through high school with aspirations to go, and it was on your wall, the college scholarship and ultimately the NFL. Talk about that decision to go to Baylor University. There's a lot of other universities represented in the audience, so talk about the Baylor experience.
That's very interesting. First of all, I prayed, and I asked the Lord, the first college that offers me a scholarship, I'm going to take that as a sign as to where I'm supposed to go. Baylor was the first and only school to offer me a scholarship to play middle linebacker. I got one other offer, and it was from University of Texas, but it was to play fullback. And I told Fred Akers at that time, I am not a fullback. I don't like fullbacks. I don't like the football. Anybody that touches the football, I don't like them either. So I am not a fullback. Can I have the opportunity to play linebacker? I said, no. I will see you next year. So that was how that turned out.
And obviously you had a very successful career at Baylor that allowed you to dream about being drafted. Tell us about that draft day when you got drafted into the NFL, achieving, again, one of your dreams.
The draft day was a very long day for me. I remember talking to Gil Brandt at the Dallas Cowboys. He came down and he said, Mike, we liked you, but you're not big enough. You know, our linebackers are bigger and they're tougher. You know, you're just not big enough. And I said, sir, you got to look at my heart. My heart is big enough. Trust me. If you're there in the second round, I said, I'm not going to be there in the second round. But I was. The Chicago Bears was another team that I talked to, and I began to study the linebackers and the history of professional football and what have you, and of course I wanted to go to the Cowboys. That was my team. But there was one other team that I really appreciated, and that was the Chicago Bears, and because of a guy by the name of Dick Butkus. And I really liked how the Monsters of the Midway sound. The Monsters of the Midway, man, that's nasty. So I remember looking at films and seeing those guys out there, and the fog would be coming out of their mouths, and I'm like, oh man, that's hot. So on draft day, I got calls from 3 different teams. The San Diego Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs, Seattle. But anyways, I got those phone calls, and they said, Mike, we're thinking about taking you in the first round. It's between you and the other guy. Just hang tight. Oh man, I went back and I sat down. They called the other guy. Okay. That happened 3 times. And when the first round was over, I went outside. I was crying. I was frustrated. I said, Lord, I've done everything in college that you could possibly do. And I can't get drafted in the first round because I'm small. And so I don't even know if I want to play in the NFL. It shows they don't even know what they're doing. And so I'm outside kicking tires, crying and praying at the same time. And then I say, Lord, if you want me to play in the NFL, let me get drafted by the Chicago Bears. 5 seconds later, my girlfriend, who is my wife now, came to the door and said, hey, Mike, the Bears just drafted you. I said, wow, Lord, that was quick.
We only have a few minutes left. We got so much we could talk about, and we haven't barely touched on your professional career yet. So tell me what it was like playing with those '85 Bears, Super Bowl. I lived in Chicago at the time. I mean, going out to those games, first of all, freezing cold weather. You played that regularly. It was the Bears. You know, it was the team. Still, probably today, one of the best professional teams ever to be put together. Talk a little bit about that. You got a lot of great characters on that team, right? Walter Payton, Refrigerator Perry, Richard Dent. Talk a little bit about that team.
You don't really know it at the time because you're playing. But if you've ever been a part of something, when you walk into a room and you own that room, you own everything in that room. If anything moves in that room, it has to go through you. Being on the '85 Bears, that's what it was like being on a football field. This is our field today. You have to ask permission for any yard you get. We might give you 1. When you think about being a part of a team like that, it was a lot of pride involved. We worked very hard, and we fought in practice to be excellent. There's something about being excellence, the call to excellence in life. It's one thing to be that on a football field, but it's another thing to call yourself to excellence in every phase of life. And for me, that's what being a part of the '85 Bears, that will always be something very, very special when you walk on the field and there's fear in the other team, and you know there's fear, and halfway through the game, the quarterback's crying, and you're telling your teammates not to hit him again. That's the kind of team it was, and that's the kind of fear we struck in our opponents.
I'm sure one question everybody in this audience would like to know is, how did the Super Bowl shuffle come about?
Dumbest thing we ever did. But it came at a great time. It came after our loss to Miami. That was our only loss. So we're on our way back to Chicago, and we're saying, man, we got to do the Super Bowl shuffle tomorrow. What? I'm not doing that. Everybody's mad. Everybody's upset. But it was one of the best things that we ever did. And after we shot that video, we were thinking to ourselves, if we don't go to the Super Bowl and win it, we are going to be the laughing stock of the league. So it really put us in a different mindset. We knew we had to win.
Incredible, and indeed you did. Congratulations. Pro Football Hall of Fame, got to be one of the greatest moments of your life. As I mentioned earlier, your speech still ranks up there as one of the best speeches of all time. Talk a little bit about what that felt like.
It was a wonderful, wonderful moment. To think of all the people in life. You know, I talk to kids all the time and have them understand, don't ever let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do. It really comes down to what you believe. That is the most important thing in life. What do I really believe in my mind's eye? No one can tell me what's really possible for me, what I can and cannot do. So standing on that stage that day, there were so many guys, bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, all those things. But they could not outwork me. And so standing on that stage that day proved something very, very important, that when you're willing to work and you believe, not just in yourself, but a God that's bigger than anything that you could possibly think of, it's very, very difficult to beat that person in anything. So
I find it absolutely incredible. You got out of Sunnyside. You were too small to play linebacker. One university wanted you. Didn't get drafted in the first round and went on to have one of the greatest careers of any football player. It's unbelievable. Tell us about your life today. What are you doing today? And I might say, even before you go into that, I know you ended up going into coaching. I think Baltimore was your first coaching job.
yes.
And one of the other great linebackers of all time, Ray Lewis, said about you, he said, for Mike, coaching is like fatherhood. He said, teaching the game is great, but giving a man tools and understanding of that is bigger than the game itself. Huge fan of yours. Talk about what it was like to get into coaching, and then what are you doing now?
Getting into coaching was an opportunity to really change lives. I think for me, it was all about the young men first. I think today in sports, it's a lot about winning, which is important, and it's a lot about money, which is nice. But I think when I played the game, it was more about getting the most out of the individual. It was more about building a team and having that team function as a team and being able to accomplish whatever goal you were trying to accomplish as a team. And so for me, that was extremely important. As far as what I'm doing now, it is all about health, mental health, heart health, as well as energy. In our world, we're going to need all the energy that we can get, and finding the cleanest and best energy we can find. Those are the two things that I'm really involved in, health and energy. Very excited about those.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I might say, because I'm not sure we said earlier, 7 kids and married, which is very rare in today's world, for 42 years. Did I get that right? 44 years?
Praise God for my wife.
Mike, thank you very much for being here. Welcome home. Houston will always be your home. Thank you for sharing your life story in a very brief period of time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Mike Singletary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.